Good to have you on board on this Tuesday edition of Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Boy, was John Kerry out selling TPP today. Not to mention the United States doing a defense deal with India, which plays right into all of it. We'll break it down tonight on the TV show RT America, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I was watching with interest last night John Kasich sell himself. I got to hand it to the guy. I've never seen a guy go so deep, and I guess that's a sports term, how deep you're going to go in the playoffs. I've never seen a guy go so deep in the competition with only one win. But he's hanging and hanging and hanging and making the case and living on polls saying that he is the guy with the lower negatives and he's the guy that could beat either Clinton or Sanders in the head in some of these key states. But then there was a soundbite that he offered up last night on CNN in their town hall that caught my attention. He says he's concerned about that guy that lives across the street that comes home dirty and takes a shower. Or he said, I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what he said. And I thought, have we entirely forgotten Measure 2? Let me just give a quick refresher course here on the Republican side. John Kasich, who I think is making a good case of why they should go with him and what he could do at a convention, he was just as radical as Scott Walker. He went after collective bargaining with public employees, but it got referred. And the majority of Ohioans voted it right off the books, Measure 2. And then, of course, Kasich kind of brought his wings in a little bit. They got clipped and wasn't as radical. But that vote changed him. And so a lot of people in Ohio are asking, okay, what's the real John Kasich? I did a Give Me a Minute on this on my Facebook that you might want to check it out. The Republican race, let's focus on it. Jonathan Alter, author, MSNBC political analyst, columnist of the Daily Beast, author of The Center Holds, Obama and His Enemies. Jonathan, good to have you back.
Great to be here, Ed.
Your thoughts on Kasich? He's going, quote, so deep in the playoffs with one win.
Yeah, it's a good way to look at it. You know, I've known John Kasich for 25 years. He's a smart guy. He's got a quick temper, which you wouldn't know because he seems to be the kind of calm, modest one in this race. But he was known as a bit of a hothead in Washington when he was in the House of Representatives. Chairman of the Budget Committee, but one of these guys who you actually can talk to. You know, he's not off in cloud cuckoo land. You can have a rational interview or conversation with him. He would be the most dangerous of the candidates against Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders, now that Paul Ryan is being Sherman-esque about it, which means like General Sherman after the Civil War is saying, you know, he will not run definitively. That's going to be Paul Ryan's position going forward. And so that sort of leaves really only three possibilities. And if you're a delegate and you're looking for who's the most electable, it's not really even close. So I think Democrats are kind of worried about Kasich, because if he were able to, you know, win on the second, third, fourth, eighth ballot, it could be a bit of a problem for them. However, I don't think that Trump will go down quietly. In other words, if he goes in with the most votes by a lot and he's denied the nomination, he's not just going to, you know, take his marbles and go home.
What do you think he'd do? What do you think he'd do?
Well, I think he'll either run as a third party, or if he's too lazy to do that, run as a third party candidate. He'll just make life miserable for whoever the pretender to the throne is, whoever, you know, gets the nomination if it's not him. And he has certainly a big enough megaphone to do that. But Kasich, I wouldn't write him off. A lot of times when you mention Kasich, people say, come on, he's only won Ohio, his home state. He's quite likely to finish second in New York a week from now.
And that's not good for Cruz.
That's not so good for Cruz. And then, you know, in some of those other Northeast primaries, Kasich could also finish second, which he did in New Hampshire, and that's why he's still in the race. Then when they go to California, Trump doesn't have much going west of the Mississippi. It's a little noticed fact about him. And the California Republican Party can be very conservative. I think that Trump and Cruz will get their share of the votes out there, but so will Kasich.
Yeah.
And so he'll be, in the race all the way to the convention.
Where's Kasich's money coming from, Jonathan?
The establishment.
So is he getting like Bush money?
Oh yeah. Some people in the establishment have said, "Don't go for Kasich because you should hold your nose and go for Cruz in order to stop Trump." But there were others who are going, "Screw that! I'm going to support the guy I think is best," and that's Kasich. So he's got some money going forward, and he already had some money even before that. Because he's been around Republican Party circles for a long time.
Let's talk about Paul Ryan for just a moment. Emphatically stating he's not going to run, not going to happen. There's nothing that could unfold at the convention that would make him the nominee. That's not the road he's going to follow. But I just get this feeling that he's thinking, okay, maybe I would take on Hillary in the midterm or Bernie in the midterm or after the first term. And he's just got a better time down the road. He's a young guy.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of tire left. I mean, what's wrong with being speaker for 4 or 8 years? What do you think he's thinking?
I think that's exactly what he's thinking. That's what he's telling his friends, that he may well run in 2020. He just thinks this is a bad year for Republicans, the way it's shaping up. And also, why would a young guy like that want to take the nomination after not entering any primaries?
Yeah.
That kind of thing worked in 1920 when they invented the smoke-filled room and they nominated Warren Harding, turned out to be a terrible president, with a bunch of guys sitting around smoking cigars. That's where that whole smoke-filled room thing comes from. But even that year, they nominated Harding over guys who had been in primaries. And you can get away with that before the modern era. But even when Hubert Humphrey was nominated in 1968 over Eugene McCarthy, who had been in a bunch of primaries, was kind of an earlier version of Bernie Sanders, people really objected to that. They didn't dump the hump, a lot of that kind of thing. And there were demonstrations at the 68 convention. So I would imagine that when Trump says his people would riot if he didn't get the nomination, I'm not sure that's going to be too far off.
Do you think Trump can get 1237 before the convention?
I think he can. I don't think he'll have 1237 from the primaries, but if he's, 10, 20, 30, 40 delegates short, I think he can close the deal in the period between the end of the primaries at the beginning of June.
And that's right up his alley if he's the deal maker he claims he is.
Yeah. So I'd still give Trump the edge, but I also think that if he has a rough time of it and he comes in more than 100 delegates short, then I think they'll nominate Cruz on a second or third ballot, because Cruz has been wiring these these state party conventions.
Yeah.
He has much better connections with the people who are actually delegates. Little known fact is that in only a handful of states do the candidates get to select the individuals who become delegates. Mm-hmm. A lot of these guys are Republican Party functionaries. They're very conservative, and they're much more likely to like Ted Cruz or possibly John Kasich than Donald Trump.
Yeah, there seems to be some confusion within the Republican Party about the rules. It's my understanding they make the rules up just before the convention, no matter what the rules were the last time.
That's true.
When Reince Priebus says the rules are the rules, that's kind of crossing some wires with what the candidates are thinking right now. So.
Yeah, that's for sure. And you can bet that Cruz and Trump will get together to try to knock Kasich out. And the way they're going to do it is they're going to adopt a rule that Romney got adopted before the last convention, which is that if you haven't won 8 primaries, you can't have your name placed in nomination.
You think they'll do that?
Oh yeah, and Trump and Cruz between them have the votes to do it. So, I mean, that's another reason why Ryan is not running, because there really wasn't a path for him.
It would be embarrassing too. I mean, to say, yeah, I'll take it, then there's no path.
So the only way that doesn't happen, which would screw Kasich, is if Kasich wins the California primary, something like that, and he comes on really strong at the end. Then a fair number of those delegates who are pledged to vote for Trump or Cruz on the first ballot, they might not vote for the rule, which says that Kasich can't run. So in other words, because they're party functionaries who might, kind of secretly or not so secretly favor Kasich, even if they're pledged on the first ballot to Trump or Cruz, they might vote for what they call an open rule. By the way, this came up between Ted Kennedy and Jimmy Carter at the 1980 Democratic Convention, where Kennedy fought it all the way into the Rules Committee and onto the floor of that convention to try to get a rule change that would allow pledged Carter delegates to switch to him. He fell narrowly short. But you're going to see all those kinds of fights over rules, and it's going to make, in all likelihood, it's going to make it a really fun convention to watch.
Well, it is, and Trump is going to cash whip these guys and secure their campaigns. That's what I think is going to happen.
Well, there will definitely be some of that, but I think the other thing that Trump has going for him is that if you're a local party official and you don't vote for Trump after on the second, third ballots, if you've been pledged to vote for him on the first, your constituents might have at you when you get home, if you're a local office holder. So they have to be careful about how much politicking they do in Cleveland.
All right, one more question I want to ask you here. Jonathan Alter, author, MSNBC political analyst, and columnist for the Daily Beast, author of The Center Holds, Obama and His Enemies. Since you've been around the Obama administration, and you've written a book on him, 2 of them actually, I believe.
Yep.
What do you make of his comment in the Fox Sunday interview saying that he thought his biggest mistake was he didn't plan for the day after in Libya? There's a lot of... Let me ask you this. Why didn't he just say, we'll let the historians decide that? Didn't he kind of open himself up here? Because he's still a big player in all this.
I think, he's trying to be candid and not one of these guys who says, I never made a mistake, not Donald Trump, And it's obvious. He has been, by and large, fairly disciplined in trying to think ahead in his foreign policy. He thinks the 3 most important questions you can ask about any foreign policy decision is, and then what? And then what? In other words, what happens the day after? And this is why he hasn't gotten us into wars, because that's the question that was not asked by George W. Bush when he went into Iraq. He never asked, and then what? So Obama, very focused on that, very focused on what he calls not doing stupid things. With Libya, it was almost like he provided U.S. weaponry against his better judgment. I can remember being up very late in the evening on MSNBC doing live coverage of the launching of that war in Libya. And remember, the early sorties, the early missions, they were done by French aircraft.
NATO.
The French really wanted this war, and that was where the U.S. was, as they called it later, leading from behind, trying to let the Europeans take the lead. But because we have the biggest military by so much, it's always going to be an American operation. And you could tell by the fact that he wanted the Europeans to take the lead that Obama was unenthusiastic about going into Libya. Hillary was very enthusiastic about doing it. He deferred to her and to others, and it didn't work out very well. Libya is chaotic, and I think Bill Clinton admitting that not intervening in Rwanda was a mistake. This is something that he wants to get right with history. I do think, though, just since we're talking about that region, Ed, he made some very big mistakes in Syria too. There are more than 200,000 people who have died there, and that's not on his head. That's not blood on his hands. But if you're president of the United States, you have to ask yourself, is there anything we could have done in Syrian policy that could have led to a less awful result. And I think he just doesn't want to face that Syria policy. He's very defensive about it, so instead he admits to some mistakes in Libya.
Jonathan Alter, always good to visit. Thanks, my friend.
Great talking to you.
You bet.
Yeah,
Author, MSNBC political analyst, Jonathan Alter. Now this.
Hey, folks, you've heard me talk about BioGreen Clean. I'm going to show you right now on my airplane just how tough this is. I want you to keep in mind, chemical-free, 100% plant-derived, biodegradable. It is the safest cleaner that you can get, and it's the most effective. Go to our website, wegotit.com, or go to biogreenclean.com. www.biogreenclean and order today.
It's time to continue our conversation about mechanical insulation. Mechanical insulation is for the piping systems in our nation's commercial and industrial facilities. Facility owners are burning up billions of dollars through the lack of mechanical insulation on these piping systems. Call the iSave team. Insulation saves America valuable energy, and this team of energy conservation specialists is shovel-ready to save you money. Visit iSaveTeam.org to have a specialist give your plant an energy audit.
We perpetuate a culture of crime all the way from Wall Street right down to the main street in our hometowns. It's worse than it has been since FDR took control of the problem and said we can't count on industry taking care of the American labor. They probably have already engaged into some type of criminal cover-up, and the law prohibits the government from even doing anything about it.
Catch America's lawyer Mike Papantonio on YouTube at youtube.com/GoLeftTV.
Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, the iSave team, all with us here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Democracy Spring. 2 days in a row now, people have been arrested at the United States Capitol. We're talking to the office today. You know, I guess you could say back in the 70s we all got arrested. I, of course, didn't. I was a weenie back then. But anyway, getting arrested today, I think, is a lot different than getting arrested in yesteryear. And I think that these kids are brave. I do. I think that they're playing with their future because it's harder to get a job when you get arrested. But they're not focused on that. They are focused on the issues, which, number one, is getting big money out of politics, having a voice in their government, have the corporations not buying and selling laws in this country, universal health care, workers' rights. That's what this Democracy Spring is all about. And there are young people who are involved and who are willing to go through the legal process and play with their future and have it on their record that they've been arrested. Now, you might not think that's a big deal, but you know what? In today's world, with more and more corporate takeovers and the scrutiny of hiring employees, I think it's a big deal. And I think getting arrested today is a hell of a lot different than it was back 30 years ago. And I commend these kids who are out there doing what they're doing, speaking up on the Capitol steps. I know I wouldn't want to do it. Not that I wouldn't fight for change, but their method is a little bit different from the one I believe in right now. And I think there's other way to voice it. But, you know, this is America. This is the chance and the gamble that they want to play. Our Lee Camp from RT America, from Unredacted, the show that plays on our network. He was out there, got arrested today, and we'll have that coverage tonight on rtamerica.com and, of course, on the News with Ed. Good to have you with us. We are back tomorrow.